The morning light in Kailua hits different than anywhere else I've ever lived. It doesn't creep in like it did through the blinds of our old house in Scottsdale. Here, it arrives all at once, gold and warm and honest, pouring through the open lanai doors like it has somewhere important to be. I sit with my coffee on the porch, watching the ocean shift from dark blue to something almost green, and I think about how I almost never got to see this. How close I came to never seeing anything again. My name is James Whitfield. I'm 67 years old. I'm a retired commercial pilot who spent 31 years in the cockpit of everything from Cessna 172S to Boeing 777S. I've flown through thunderstorms over the Gulf of Mexico, landed crosswind in Anchorage with ice on the wings, and once brought a plane down safely in Denver with a failed hydraulic system and 183 passengers holding their breath behind me. But nothing, not one single moment in 31 years of flying, prepared me for what my own son tried to do to me. It's April 2026 now. A full year since I watched my son's face on a police monitor as he realized the trap had closed around him. A year since I heard my daughter-in-law's voice crack not with remorse, but with rage when the agents told her it was over. 12 months of therapy, of sleepless nights, of mornings exactly like this one, where I sit and try to understand how a boy I raised decided that my life was worth less than a check. I'll tell you everything. Because I think there are people out there, fathers, mothers, grandparents, who need to hear this. Who need to know that the people closest to you can become the most dangerous. It started with love. Linda Whitfield was the only woman I ever truly loved. We met in 1984 at a 4th of July barbecue in Tempe. I was 25, fresh out of flight school. She was 23, finishing her master's in education, and she had this laugh full, rolling, unashamed, that made everybody in a room turn their heads. I asked her to dance even though there was no music playing. She said yes. That was the beginning of 40 years together. We built a life in Scottsdale. I flew routes for American Airlines while Linda taught 4th grade. We bought our house on East Camelback Road in 1991. Ethan James Whitfield was born on the 3rd of March 1993. 7 pounds, 11 ounces. He was a beautiful child, bright, curious, always following me around with a toy airplane in one hand, convinced that if he watched me long enough, he'd learn every secret I had. Linda got her diagnosis in October 2023. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 3. The doctor said 6 to 14 months. I remember driving home that afternoon, Linda quiet in the passenger seat. She finally turned to me and said, "James, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of you being alone." The next 8 months were a war. Chemo. Radiation. Experimental trials that cost us $94,000 out of pocket. I watched the woman who laughed louder than anyone become thin, quiet, careful with her movements. Ethan came home during those months not often enough. Always busy with his real estate firm in Phoenix, but he came. He'd hold Linda's hand and say, "You're gonna beat this, Mom." And she would smile at him with such bottomless love that I'd have to leave the room. She died on the 14th of June 2024, a Tuesday. 47 inches the morning. Her face was peaceful, truly peaceful, like she was dreaming about something good. At the funeral, Ethan gave the eulogy. He said, "My mother taught me that love isn't a feeling. It's a decision you make every single day." Afterward, he pulled me aside, put both hands on my shoulders and said, "Dad, I'm going to take care of you. Whatever you need. I promise. God help me." I believed every word. The months after Linda's death were the darkest of my life. I'd wake at 3 a.m., reaching for her side of the bed. I'd make 2 cups of coffee before remembering. The house became a museum of absence. I stopped flying my Cessna. I stopped answering the phone. The world became very small. It was during this time that Ethan introduced me to Vanessa. He'd been dating her about a year, he said. Vanessa Clark, 32, stunning, with long dark hair and green eyes that seemed to calculate everything they landed on. social media influencer, lifestyle content, 500,000 followers. She walked into my living room like she was walking onto a stage and said, "Mr. Whitfield, Ethan adores you." Something about that smile. Something about the way it arrived too quickly and stayed too long. Pilots learn to read instruments, to notice when a reading doesn't match what your gut tells you. My instruments were pinging, but I was grieving, lonely, and I wanted to believe my son had found happiness. They married fast. January 2025, 7 months after Linda's funeral. Small ceremony in Sedona. I stood watching him say his vows to this woman I barely knew and thought, Linda would want me to be happy for him. New beginnings. If I'd only known what kind of beginning they were planning. I don't hate my son. Even after the insurance policy, the hired man on the cliff, the courtroom, and the sentencing, I don't hate him. I hate what he became, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to understand the difference. If you've ever trusted someone completely, if you've ever believed in your family the way I believed in mine, stay with me, because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about love, about loyalty, and about how far greed can push a person past the point of no return. After Linda's funeral, Ethan called me every Sunday. Like clockwork, 10 a.m., my phone would ring, and his name would light up the screen. The first few weeks, those calls felt like oxygen. He'd ask how I was eating, whether I'd gone outside, if I needed anything from the store. He sounded like the boy I raised, thoughtful, steady, present. But by August, the calls started getting shorter. 5 minutes instead of 20. His voice carried that distracted tone I recognized from years of watching him juggle clients and closings. Everything good, Dad? Okay. Love you. Talk next week. Click. I told myself he was busy, building his business, being a newlywed. I told myself a lot of things that year. Vanessa never called. Not once. In the 7 months since they'd married, my daughter-in-law hadn't picked up the phone to check on me a single time. When I mentioned this to Ethan, he laughed it off. She's not a phone person, Dad. You know how her generation is everything's texts and DMs. I didn't push it. I should have pushed it. By September 2024, 3 months after Linda's death, I forced myself back into some version of a routine. Morning coffee on the porch. A walk around the neighborhood. Tuesdays at the VA, where I volunteered reading to veterans who couldn't read for themselves anymore. It wasn't living, not really, but it was movement. And movement was all I had. The money was fine. Linda and I had been careful our whole lives. The house was paid off, worth about $720,000 in the Scottsdale market. I had my pension from American Airlines, Social Security, and roughly $380,000 in savings and investments. Nothing extravagant, but enough for a 66-year-old widower who didn't need much. I mentioned the money because, as I learned later, someone had been counting it long before I was. In October, Ethan and Vanessa drove up from Phoenix for dinner. It was the first time I'd seen them since the wedding, and I spent the whole day cooking Linda's pot roast recipe, the one with the carrots and red wine that took 4 hours. I set the table for 3. It felt strange. Wrong number. They arrived at 6. Ethan looked thinner than I remembered. With shadows under his eyes, he tried to hide with a big smile. Vanessa looked immaculate designer dress, fresh highlights, nails done in some shade of red that probably had a name like Venetian Sunset. She hugged me at the door and said, "This house smells amazing, Dad." It was the first time she'd called me Dad. It should have felt warm. It felt rehearsed. Over dinner, I noticed things. Small things. The way Ethan's leg bounced under the table. How he checked his phone 3 times in 20 minutes, angling the screen away from both me and Vanessa. How Vanessa steered every conversation back to money, my retirement plans. Whether I'd considered downsizing. If the house was too much to maintain alone. She asked these questions casually, between bites of pot roast, as if she were simply making conversation. But I'd spent 3 decades reading cockpit instruments under pressure. I knew when someone was fishing for data. Have you thought about what you want to do with this place long term? Vanessa asked, swirling her wine. I mean, 4 bedrooms for one person. That's a lot of empty space. I haven't decided anything yet, I said. Linda and I built this home together. I'm not ready to let it go. She nodded sympathetically. Of course. Of course. I just meant, whenever you're ready, Ethan. And I could help you find something smaller, more manageable. We worry about you rattling around in here alone. Ethan said nothing. He stared at his plate, like the pot roast held the answers to questions I couldn't hear. After dinner, while Vanessa was in the bathroom, I asked my son directly, "Everything okay with you? Work going all right?" He looked up at me with something in his eyes I couldn't name. Fear? Shame? Exhaustion? Fine, Dad. Just busy. Market's tough right now. He paused, then added, I'm working on something big. If it comes through, everything changes. What kind of something? Just a deal. A big deal. I'll tell you about it when it's solid. He forced a smile. Don't worry about me. But I did worry. That night, after they left, I sat in Linda's chair, the old wingback by the fireplace, and I worried. Something beneath the surface. Like turbulence you can't see but can feel in your bones. 31 years in the air teaches you one thing above all others. When your instruments disagree with what your eyes are telling you, trust the instruments. My instruments were screaming. 3 weeks later, I fell down the stairs. It was a Thursday morning, just past 7. I was heading down to make coffee, same as every day, when my foot caught on the 3rd step from the top, and I went down hard, hit my shoulder on the banister, cracked my head against the wall at the landing, and ended up in a heap at the bottom with stars swimming in my vision and pain shooting through my left wrist. I lay there for a long time. Minutes, maybe 10. The house was silent around me, and I thought, this is how it happens. This is how a man dies alone. Not with drama or ceremony, just a misstep and no one to call for help. I wasn't badly hurt. Bruised ribs, a sprained wrist, a cut on my forehead that bled like a river, but didn't need stitches. I cleaned myself up, iced my wrist, and sat at the kitchen table feeling old and fragile and furious about both. It was only later, 2 days later, that I went back to look at that 3rd step. The carpet runner was loose. Not worn loose, not naturally pulled up by years of use. The tack strip underneath had been pried up, 3 nails, pulled cleanly out of the wood, the holes still fresh and pale. Someone had tampered with my stairs. I stood there staring at those empty nail holes, and a cold feeling spread through my chest like ice water in a fuel line. I thought about who had been in my house recently. The answer was short. Ethan and Vanessa. 3 weeks ago, Vanessa had used the upstairs bathroom. Ethan had gone up to grab something from my old room. They'd both been on those stairs. Both had opportunity, but I pushed the thought away. I physically shook my head and said out loud, in my empty house, no. Stop it. You're being paranoid. Because what kind of father suspects his own son of trying to hurt him? What kind of man looks at loosened carpet tacks and thinks murder instead of maintenance? A careful man. A man who spent his life trusting instruments over instinct. A man who survived because he never ignored a warning light. No matter how unlikely the failure seemed. I didn't call the police. I didn't call Ethan. I got a hammer and fixed the tack strip myself, pressing each nail back into the wood with hands that refused to stop trembling. But I didn't forget. And 3 weeks later, when I found what was on Ethan's laptop, I understood that my instruments had been right all along. Thanksgiving 2024. Ethan and Vanessa invited me to their place in Phoenix for the holiday. I almost said no. The thought of driving 2 hours to sit in a house that wasn't mine, eating turkey that wasn't Linda's recipe, making small talk with a woman whose smile never reached her eyes, but I went. Because that's what fathers do. They show up, Their condo was in one of those new developments near Old Town Scottsdale, glass and concrete, rooftop pool, valet parking. The kind of place that costs $4,000 a month and looks like a hotel lobby. Vanessa had decorated for the holiday. White pumpkins, gold candles, eucalyptus garlands, draped over everything. It looked like a magazine spread. It didn't look like anyone actually lived there. Dinner was catered. I asked about this, trying to keep my voice light. "You didn't cook?" Vanessa laughed that practiced musical laugh and said, "Oh, Dad. Life's too short to spend 8 hours in a kitchen. We ordered from this incredible place in Tempe. Farm to table. You'll love it." I didn't love it. It tasted like money trying to be food. But I smiled and said it was wonderful. Because the alternative was silence. And silence in that condo felt dangerous. After dinner, while Vanessa cleared the biodegradable containers into the trash, Ethan poured me a bourbon and sat next to me on their enormous white sofa. He seemed different that night. Lighter, almost manic. His eyes had that glassy brightness I'd seen in young co-pilots running on caffeine and adrenaline before a long-haul flight. "Dad, I want to talk to you about something." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Vanessa and I have been talking, and we want to do something special for you. For everything you've been through this year. You don't have to do anything special for me, son. We want to. You deserve it." He pulled out his phone and showed me a screen. A travel website. Blue water. Green mountains. White sand. Hawaii. 8 days on Kauai. The Garden Isle. We booked everything. Flights. Hotel. Excursions. The Napali coast hike. A helicopter tour. Sunset cruise. The whole package. I stared at the screen. The photos were beautiful cliffs rising from turquoise water. Waterfalls threading through jungle green. It looked like paradise. It looked like the kind of trip Linda and I had always talked about taking and never did. "Ethan, this is too much." "How much did this cost?" "Don't worry about that. Consider it a late birthday present, and an early Father's Day present, and a thank you for being the best dad anyone could ask for." He put his hand on my shoulder. His grip was tight. "You deserve to see something beautiful again, Dad." Vanessa appeared in the doorway, drying her hands on a towel, smiling that red carpet smile. "We leave April 12th. All 3 of us. Family trip. All 3 of us?" I looked between them. "You're both coming?" "Of course," Vanessa said. "We wouldn't send you alone. It's a family vacation. Quality time." She sat on the arm of the sofa next to Ethan and placed her hand on his back. "Proprietary. Deliberate. We fly into Lihu, spend 8 days exploring the island, fly home April 20th. I've already planned the whole itinerary. I should have felt grateful. A son and daughter-in-law wanting to spend 8 days with their aging father in Hawaii, that's a gift. That's love. That's family." But my instruments were pinging again. Why now? Why this sudden generosity from a son whose phone calls had shrunk to 5 minutes, whose visits had grown rare, whose eyes carried shadows? He wouldn't explain. Why was Vanessa, who had never once called to check on me, suddenly planning an elaborate family vacation? And why did Ethan's hand tremble on my shoulder when he said, "You deserve to see something beautiful again"? I said yes. What else could I say? Saying no would mean admitting what I suspected, and I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to look my son in the eye and say, "I think you're planning something terrible." So I smiled. I said thank you. I hugged them both. Vanessa's perfume was expensive and heavy, and when she held me, I felt her counting the seconds until she could let go. That night I drove home on the I-17 with the desert dark and flat on both sides, and my headlights cutting through nothing. Linda's voice came to me clearly, the way it sometimes did in those months, not a hallucination, just memory so vivid it felt present. She said, "Trust yourself, James. You always trusted yourself in the air." I made a decision on that drive. I wouldn't confront Ethan. I wouldn't refuse the trip. But I would watch. I would pay attention. I would do what I'd done for 31 years in the cockpit. Monitor every instrument, note every anomaly, and be ready to act the moment something went from yellow to red. December passed. Christmas was quiet. Ethan sent a gift card and called for 4 minutes. January brought their wedding anniversary. I wasn't invited to the dinner. February came and went with nothing but a text. Hey Dad, hope you're staying warm. Hawaii countdown. 2 months. In March, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a printed confirmation page for a life insurance policy. $450,000. Term life. Policyholder, James R. Whitfield. Beneficiary, Ethan J. Whitfield. Issue date, the 15th of November 2024. I had never applied for this policy. I had never spoken to the issuing company. I had never authorized anyone to use my name, my social security number, or my medical records to purchase a $450,000 death benefit on my life. But someone had. I sat at my kitchen table with that paper in my hands, and the last 40 years of fatherhood collapsed into a single, unbearable truth. My son wanted me dead. Not in the abstract, not as some dark fantasy born of frustration or greed. He had taken concrete steps. He had forged documents. He had put a price on my life, $450,000, and bought tickets to the place where he planned to collect. The paper shook in my hands. Or maybe my hands shook around the paper. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. I picked up the phone. Not to call Ethan. Not to call the police. I called the one man I trusted, completely. The one man who had never lied to me in 40 years of friendship. I called Marcus. Marcus Delaney was the kind of man you meet once in a lifetime if you're lucky. 61 years old, built like a linebacker gone slightly soft, with a shaved head and a voice that could fill a hangar without trying. We'd met in 1996 when he was a young first officer on a Phoenix to Chicago route, and I was his captain. He was good in the cockpit. Calm, precise. Always 3 steps ahead of the situation. We flew together for 6 years before he left commercial aviation to start a private security firm. By the time he retired in 2019, Delaney Security had contracts with 3 Fortune 500 companies and a reputation for being the kind of outfit you called when things got serious. Marcus lived in Chandler now, 20 minutes from my house. We played poker every other Thursday, with 2 other retired pilots had for years. He'd been at Linda's funeral. He'd brought me groceries the week after without asking. He was the closest thing I had to a brother. When I called him that March evening, my voice must have sounded wrong, because he didn't even let me finish my first sentence. "I'm coming over," he said. "Don't move." He was at my door in 18 minutes. I know because I counted every one of them. Sitting at my kitchen table with that insurance document in front of me, like a bomb I was afraid to touch again. Marcus sat across from me. He read the document once, then again, then a third time. His face didn't change, that was Marcus, unreadable when it mattered, but his jaw tightened in a way I'd seen only twice before. Once, during a near miss at O'Hare, and once when his ex-wife's lawyer tried to take his daughter's custody. "You didn't sign this," he said. "Not a question. No. You didn't authorize anyone to apply on your behalf." "No." He set the paper down carefully, like it might shatter. "James, tell me everything. From the beginning. The dinner. The stairs. The trip. Everything." So I told him. The October dinner, where Vanessa asked about my finances. Ethan's big deal. The staircase. The pulled tack strip. The fresh nail holes. The Hawaii tickets at Thanksgiving. The way Ethan's hand trembled. The months of silence followed by that single manic evening of generosity. And now this a $450,000 policy I never purchased. Naming my son, as the man who'd profit from my death. Marcus listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. The kitchen clock ticked. Outside, a coyote howled somewhere in the desert dark. "The staircase," he finally said. "That was a test run." "What do you mean?" "I mean they tried once already. Low risk, deniable. Old man falls downstairs, happens every day. If it had worked, they'd have collected without ever needing Hawaii. When it didn't work, they moved to plan B. Somewhere remote. Somewhere with cliffs and ocean and 1,000 ways for a 66-year-old man to have an accident far from home. Hearing it laid out like that, clinical, logical, the way you'd brief a flight plan, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. My stomach turned. I tasted bile. "I need to call the police," I said. "Not yet." Marcus held up a hand. "Think like a pilot, James. What do you have right now? A loose carpet strip that you already fixed. No photos, no evidence. An insurance policy that a lawyer could argue you forgot about, or that Ethan applied for as estate planning with your verbal consent, and a gut feeling. That's not enough. A detective will nod, take a report, and file it in a drawer. Then what do? We build a case. A real one. The kind that doesn't give them room to maneuver." He leaned forward. "You said the trip is April 12th. That gives us 3 weeks. I still have contacts, FBI, local PD, insurance fraud investigators. Let me make some calls. Quietly. And in the meantime, you act normal. You text Ethan. You confirm the trip. You give them zero reason to think anything has changed. You're asking me to pretend. I'm asking you to survive." His eyes were steady, dark, unwavering. "You spent 31 years keeping planes in the air when everything was trying to bring them down. This is the same thing. Stay calm. Trust the process. And let me work." I wanted to argue. I wanted to drive to Phoenix and pound on Ethan's door and demand an explanation, scream at him, shake him, ask him how the boy who cried at his mother's funeral could put a price on his father's head. But Marcus was right. Emotion wouldn't save me. Evidence would. "Okay," I said. 3 weeks. Marcus nodded. He stood, folded the insurance document, and put it in his jacket pocket. "I'm taking this. I'll have a forensic accountant look at the policy details, issuing company, application records, signature comparisons. If Ethan forged your signature, we'll find it." He paused at the door. "James, one more thing." "What?" "Don't be alone with them. Either of them. Not in your house, not in their car, not anywhere. Until this is resolved, you treat them like unknowns in the cockpit. Monitor. Don't engage." After he left, I sat in the dark for a long time. The house felt enormous around me, all those empty rooms, all that silence. Linda's photograph watched me from the mantel, her smile, frozen in time, from a vacation we took to San Diego in 2015. She was laughing at something I'd said, her hair blowing sideways in the ocean wind. "What happened to our boy?" I asked her. The photograph didn't answer. The next morning, I did what Marcus told me. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Ethan. "Hey son, getting excited about Hawaii. Thanks again for planning this. Love you, Dad." 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, "Can't wait, Dad. It's going to be the trip of a lifetime. The trip of a lifetime." I stared at those words until my screen went dark. I spent the next 48 hours doing what pilots do best. Waiting. And watching. I didn't contact Ethan again. I didn't reach out to Vanessa. I went to the VA on Tuesday, read Hemingway to a 92-year-old Korean War veteran named Harold, and pretended my world wasn't fracturing beneath me. On Friday, Marcus called. "I found something. Meet me at Rosita's." Noon. Rosita's was a diner in Mesa we'd been going to since the 90s. Good coffee, bad lighting, nobody listening. I drove there with my hands tight on the wheel, unsure if I wanted answers or dreaded them. Marcus was already in the back booth. He had a manila folder in front of him and a look on his face that I recognized from our flying days, the look he got when weather was worse than forecast and there was no alternate airport in range. "Sit down," he said. "It's worse than we thought." The diner smelled like burned coffee and bacon grease, the same way it had smelled for 30 years. I slid into the booth across from Marcus, and he pushed the manila folder toward me without a word. I opened it. The first page was a printout from the insurance company's internal records. Marcus had a contact there, someone from his security days who owed him a favor. The application for my $450,000 policy had been submitted online on the 12th of November 2024, 3 days before the official issue date. The applicant had used my social security number, my date of birth, my home address, and had answered all medical history questions accurately down to the minor heart murmur I'd been diagnosed with in 2019. The digital signature on the application was a scanned image. Not typed. Scanned. Someone had practiced my handwriting and submitted a photograph of the forgery. "Page 2, Marcus said. Page 2 was a bank statement. Not mine, Ethan's. Marcus had pulled it through channels I didn't ask about. Ethan's primary checking account at Chase showed a payment of $3,200 to Pacific Mutual Term Services on the 10th of November 2024. The first premium on my death, paid 2 days before the application was even submitted, which meant he'd set up the payment in advance. Premeditated. Calculated. Like filing a flight plan for a trip you intend to crash. "Keep going," Marcus said. Page 3 made my vision blur. It was a credit report summary for Ethan James Whitfield. Total outstanding debt, $412,000. 3 credit cards maxed. A personal loan from a private lender at 22% interest, $180,000, taken out in June 2024. The month Linda died. While I was burying my wife, my son was borrowing $180,000 from someone who charged loan shark rates. "Gambling," Marcus said, reading my face. My guy traced the credit card charges. 11 trips to Talking Stick Resort Casino between January and October 2024. Wire transfers to 3 offshore sports betting platforms. He was in deep before Linda even got sick, James. By the time she died, he was drowning. I closed the folder. I couldn't look at any more. "The $180,000 loan," I said. "Who's the lender?" "A man named Victor Salinas. Runs a private lending operation out of Mesa. Not technically illegal, he files his paperwork. Charges interest within Arizona's limit by a fraction of a percent. But the people who borrow from Victor Salinas don't do it because they have options. They do it because no bank on earth will touch them." Marcus paused. Ethan missed 2 payments. September and December. "Victor's people don't send reminder letters, James. They send visits." The picture assembled itself in my mind with terrible clarity, like an approach plate coming into focus through fog. Ethan was $412,000 in debt. He owed money to a man who collected with intimidation. His real estate firm was... I looked at Marcus, and he confirmed it with a nod. "The firm's been bleeding since 2023. He closed exactly 2 deals last year. His broker's license is under review for a complaint filed by a client in Scottsdale. He's running on fumes." "And Vanessa?" Marcus pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot. Vanessa's credit card statement, one of them. Apparently she had 6. Monthly charges totaling $18,400. Designer purchases, spa treatments, a $4,200 monthly payment on a leased Mercedes GLE, subscription boxes, influencer coaching, professional photography sessions. Her Instagram showed a woman living a life of luxury. Her bank account showed a woman $87,000 in personal debt, with a monthly income of $2,100 from brand partnerships. Together, Marcus said, they owe just under $500,000. And the only asset within reach, the only one large enough to solve everything at once, is you. The $450,000 policy, plus whatever they'd get from your estate. The house. The savings. Your pension death benefit. He leaned back. I estimate they were looking at close to $1.2 million total if you died. That's not just enough to clear their debt, it's enough to start over. Clean slate, new life. I thought about Thanksgiving. Vanessa's white pumpkins. Ethan's shaking hand on my shoulder. You deserve to see something beautiful again, Dad. They'd sat across from me eating catered turkey and planning my funeral. There's one more thing, Marcus said. He reached into his jacket and produced a single printed page. An email. Sent from a Proton Mail address encrypted. Anonymous to another Proton Mail address. Marcus's contact had flagged it through a metadata trace on Ethan's home IP address. The email was dated the 28th of February 2025. 12 days ago. It read, confirmed. April 14. Kalalau Trail. Mile 6. Solo section. Make it look natural. Second half on completion. No contact after. I read it 3 times. Each time, the words meant the same thing. April 14, 2 days into our Hawaii trip. Kalalau Trail. One of the most dangerous hikes in America. 11 miles along sheer sea cliffs, with drops of 2,000 feet. Mile 6, the remotest section, where cell service dies and rescue takes hours. Make it look natural. A fall. An accident. A 67-year-old man who slipped on a wet trail and tumbled into the Pacific. They hired someone, I said. They hired someone. Marcus's voice was flat. Final. This isn't amateur hour anymore, James. This is a contract. Paid in 2 installments. Someone is going to be on that trail waiting for you. The diner sounds faded, the clink of cups, the murmur of other tables, the sizzle from the kitchen. Everything went quiet except my own heartbeat, which I could feel in my throat, my wrists, my temples. I need to go to the police now, I said. Yes, Marcus said. But not local PD. This crosses state lines. The insurance fraud was filed in Delaware. The email was routed through servers in 3 countries, and the intended crime scene is federal land in Hawaii. This is FBI territory. He slid a business card across the table. Simple white card, blue seal. Special Agent Diana Reeves. FBI Phoenix Field Office. Financial Crimes and Fraud Division. You already contacted them, I said. I made an introductory call. She's expecting to hear from you Monday morning. He held my gaze. James, I need you to understand what's about to happen. Once you walk into that office, there's no going back. They'll want your cooperation. They'll want you to continue acting normal, maybe even board that plane. They'll use you to build the case. It won't be comfortable. It won't be safe. But it's the only way to make sure Ethan and Vanessa face real consequences. I looked down at the email printout. Make it look natural. My own son had typed those words, or approved them, or paid for them. My son, whose first word was Dada, whose hand I'd held on the first day of kindergarten, who cried in my arms when his dog died at age 11. Monday morning, I said. I'll be there. Marcus reached across the table and gripped my forearm firm, steady. The way a co-pilot grabs you during turbulence to say, I'm here. We're doing this together. You're not alone in this, James. You were never alone. I drove home through the desert dusk with the folder on my passenger seat and Linda's voice in my head saying, trust yourself. And for the first time since her death, I felt something besides grief. I felt purpose, cold, clear, precise, like lining up a runway in zero visibility and knowing exactly where the ground was. They thought they were sending me to die. They had no idea I was already 10 steps ahead. Monday morning, the 17th of March, 2025. I put on a clean button-down, shaved for the first time in 3 days, and drove to the FBI Phoenix Field Office on Deer Valley Road. The building was beige and unremarkable, the kind of place you'd drive past 1,000 times without noticing. That was probably the point. Marcus met me in the parking lot. He wore a blazer despite the heat, and his face had that lockdown calm I remembered from flight emergencies, no wasted emotion, every ounce of energy directed at the problem. We walked in together. Security check, visitor badges, An elevator to the third floor. A receptionist led us to a conference room with a long table, fluorescent lights, and a window overlooking the freeway. Special Agent Diana Reeves was already waiting. She was younger than I expected, maybe 42, 43, with short brown hair. No jewelry except a wedding band, and eyes that moved like a hawk, tracking prey. She stood when we entered, shook my hand firmly, and said, "Mr. Whitfield, thank you for coming in. I know this isn't easy." "No," I said. "It isn't." She gestured to chairs. We sat. She opened a laptop, placed a recorder on the table, and said, "With your permission, I'd like to record this conversation. Everything you tell me today will be used to determine whether we have sufficient basis to open a formal investigation. You have my permission." For the next 2 hours, I told her everything. The October dinner, the staircase, the insurance policy, the email Marcus had obtained, Ethan's debt, Vanessa's spending, the Hawaii trip, April 14, Kalalau Trail, Mile 6. I spoke steadily, the way I used to deliver incident reports after rough flights. Factual, sequential, no editorializing. Diana listened without interrupting, occasionally typing notes, occasionally asking me to clarify a date or a dollar amount. When I finished, she sat back and studied me for a long moment. Then she said, "Mr. Whitfield, I want to be direct with you. What you've described, if corroborated, constitutes conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, wire fraud, and potentially solicitation of a contract, killing across state lines. These are serious federal charges. I understand. What I need from you is cooperation. Active cooperation." She closed the laptop and folded her hands. "We can arrest your son and daughter-in-law today based on the insurance fraud alone. The forged application is enough for that. But fraud charges carry 5 to 10 years. If we want the conspiracy to murder charge, if we want to ensure they can never do this again, we need more. We need the person on the other end of that email. We need the transaction. We need them to commit an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy." "You want me to get on that plane," I said. "I want you to let them believe everything is proceeding as planned. I want us to be waiting in Hawaii when their hired contact makes his move." She leaned forward. "I won't mislead you. There is risk. Controlled risk. We'll have agents on you from the moment you leave this office until the moment handcuffs close. But you will be in proximity to people who intend you harm. I need to know you understand that." I looked at Marcus. His face gave nothing away, but his eyes said what he wouldn't say in front of a federal agent. "Your call, Captain." "I understand," I said. "What do you need me to do?" Diana pulled out a timeline. She'd already drafted a operational plan, color-coded, with dates and locations. She'd been working on this before I walked in. Marcus's introductory call had given her enough to start building. Phase 1. Containment. Between now and April 12, you maintain normal contact with Ethan and Vanessa. You text. You confirm plans. You express excitement. We monitor their communications. I'll have warrants for their phones and email by Wednesday. You do nothing to alert them. Phase 2. Travel. On April 12, you go to Sky Harbor as planned. You check in. You pass through security. But you don't board their flight. We pull you aside at the gate discreetly. It'll look like a random security screening and route you to a separate aircraft. You'll arrive in Kauai 6 hours before them on a direct flight under a cover name. Phase 3. Surveillance. Our team in Hawaii takes over. We identify the contact the person hired for the trail. We track payment, communication, movement. We let the plan proceed to the point of overt action without allowing actual harm. Phase 4. Interdiction. On April 14, when the contact makes his move on the Kalalau Trail, we arrest him. Simultaneously, agents arrest Ethan and Vanessa at their hotel. Everything happens at once. No one runs. She made it sound clean. surgical, like a flight plan with every waypoint marked and every contingency covered. But I'd been flying long enough to know that no plan survives first contact with weather. What if they change the date? I asked. What if they move it up? We'll know. Their phones will be monitored in real time. Any change in plan, we adapt. Diana paused. Mr. Whitfield, I've run operations like this before. Financial crimes that escalate to violence. The key is patience and control. We won't let anything happen to you. Marcus finally spoke. The alternative is, we arrest them now and they get 5 years for fraud. Maybe less with a good lawyer. They're out by 2030, still in debt. And you spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. He was right. 5 years wasn't enough. Not for what they'd planned. Not for that email. Make it look natural, written about me like I was a problem to be solved. An obstacle between them and money. I'll do it, I said. All of it. Diana nodded. No surprise she'd expected this. Good. I'm assigning 2 agents to your personal detail starting tonight. You won't see them, but they'll be there. Any deviation from normal, anyone approaching your house, any unexpected contact from Ethan, you call this number immediately. She slid a card across the table with a handwritten cell number on the back. We spent another hour on details. My phone would be cloned, so the FBI could read everything Ethan and Vanessa sent me in real time. I'd be fitted with a recording device for any in-person meetings. If Ethan called, I was to answer normally, stay calm, and let him talk. Under no circumstances was I to confront him, accuse him, or give any indication that I knew. One last thing, Diana said as Marcus and I stood to leave. I know this is your son. I know that makes everything harder. But from this moment forward, I need you to think of him as a subject of investigation, not your child, not the boy you raised, a subject. Can you do that? I thought about Ethan at 5 years old, sitting on my lap in the cockpit of a parked 737, his small hands on the yoke, saying, "I'm flying, Daddy! I'm flying!" I thought about Ethan at 16, backing my car into a mailbox and looking at me with absolute terror until I started laughing. I thought about Ethan at 32, typing an email that arranged my murder on a cliffside trail. I can do that, I said. I wasn't sure I could. But I said it anyway. The drive home was quiet. Marcus followed me in his truck, a silent escort through the Phoenix afternoon traffic. When we reached my house, he walked me to the door and said, 3 weeks, James. 26 days. Then it's over. 26 days. I'd once flown a 7-week rotation in the Middle East during the Gulf War, sleeping in crew quarters, eating mess hall food, landing on runways still smoking from ordnance. 26 days was nothing compared to that. Except this time, the enemy was my own blood. The hardest part wasn't the fear. It was the acting. For 26 days, I pretended to be a grateful father looking forward to a vacation with his son. I texted Ethan every few days, casual, warm, exactly the tone of a man who suspects nothing. Just bought new hiking boots for the trip. Do I need a rain jacket for Kauai in April? Send me the hotel info so I can look it up. Each message felt like swallowing glass. Ethan responded with enthusiasm that now read like performance. Exclamation marks. Emojis. Links to restaurant reviews and snorkeling spots. You're gonna love it, Dad. Vanessa found this amazing beachfront restaurant for our first night. Every text was a breadcrumb on the trail, leading me toward a cliff. Diana's team monitored everything. Every 3 days, she called me from a blocked number with updates. Short, precise, no wasted words. She reminded me of the best flight controllers I'd worked with. The ones who could manage 12 aircraft in a thunderstorm without raising their voice. March 22. Ethan made a $5,000 cash withdrawal from his Chase account. We're tracking where it goes. March 26. Vanessa searched Kalalau Trail accident statistics and Na Pali Coast Drowning Deaths 2024 on her laptop. Screenshots preserved. March 29. Ethan sent another email from the Proton Mail account. Contents. Half now, half after. Confirm visual. Response received. Confirmed. Send photo for ID. Ethan replied with a photograph. What photograph? I asked. Diana paused. A photograph of you, Mr. Whitfield. Taken at Thanksgiving. You're sitting at their dining table. I hung up and sat in my dark kitchen for a very long time. My son had sent a photograph of me to a stranger, so that stranger would know which man to push off a cliff. He'd chosen a photo from a holiday meal, a family gathering. I was probably smiling in it, probably holding a glass of wine, and thinking about how nice it was to be together. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle, and I talked to Linda. Not out loud in my head, the way I'd started doing since she died. How did we miss this? Was there something when he was young, something we should have seen? Did we fail him? Or did something else break him that we never knew about? No answers came. They never did. But asking the questions kept me sane. April arrived. The desert turned gold and pink with wildflowers, poppies along the highway medians, brittlebush blooming on every hillside. Beautiful. Indifferent. The world didn't care that a man was counting down the days until his son tried to kill him. The world just kept blooming. On April 3rd, Ethan called. Not a text, an actual phone call. The first one longer than 2 minutes in months. Dad! Hey! Just wanted to check in. 9 days out. I know, I'm excited, son. The words tasted like ash. Listen, I wanted to go over the itinerary real quick. Day 1, we land, get settled, dinner on the beach. Day 2, we do a boat tour of the coast, super chill, nothing strenuous. Day 3, helicopter tour in the morning. Free afternoon. Day 4. He paused. Just a fraction of a second. But I caught it. 31 years of listening for engine anomalies. I caught it. Day 4. We hike the Kalalau Trail. The first section 11 miles along the coast. Supposed to be incredible. Sounds wonderful, I said. All three of us? Another micro pause. Actually, Vanessa's not a big hiker. She'll probably stay back and do a spa day. But you and me, Dad. Father-son adventure. Like old times. Like old times. When he was 12, and I took him hiking in Sedona Red Rock Country, Cathedral Rock Trail, he'd scrambled up the sandstone like a goat, fearless. Laughing, reaching back to grab my hand at the steep parts. That boy. That beautiful, fearless boy. I'd love that, Ethan, I said. Just you. And me. After we hung up, I forwarded Diana's team the call recording my phone, captured everything automatically now. She called back within the hour. April 14. The hike. He confirmed it. And Vanessa conveniently won't be present. She'll have a clean alibi at the spa. Diana's voice carried something close to satisfaction. Not personal, professional. The pieces were falling into place. We've identified the contact in Hawaii. His name is Kai Nakamura, 38 years old. Lives in Princeville, North Shore of Kauai. Has a record assault in 2018, dismissed. Theft in 2020. Plea deal. He works as a freelance trail guide. A trail guide, I said. Perfect cover. He knows every inch of that coastline. He knows where the trail narrows, where the drops are sheer, where a body would hit water and disappear. Ethan found him through an encrypted forum. We're still tracing the connection, but the payment structure is clear. $15,000 total. $5,000 up front, $10,000 on completion, $15,000. That's what my life was worth to my son. Less than the monthly payment on Vanessa's leased Mercedes. Kai doesn't know we're watching? I asked. No. And he won't. We have eyes on him now. Local field office in Honolulu has 2 agents on rotation. He's going about his normal life, taking tourists on hikes, posting on social media, waiting for April 14. And the plan holds? I board a different flight? The plan holds. April 12. You arrive at Sky Harbor at 6 a.m. for the 8:15 departure. You check in normally. You walk to the gate. At 7:50, a TSA supervisor will approach you and say there's been a random security rescreen. You'll be escorted to a private area. From there, we move you to a direct flight, departing at 9:30 under the name Robert Chen, cover identity, ticket purchased by the Bureau. You land in Lihu at 1:45 p.m. local time. Ethan and Vanessa's flight arrives at 7:20 p.m. By the time they land, you'll already be in a safe house on the south side of the island with our team. And Ethan won't notice I'm not on the plane. Different cabin. He booked you in economy. He and Vanessa are in first class. The flight is full, he won't be able to check. We'll send a text from your cloned number after landing. Made it. Grabbing my bag. Meet you at baggage claim? By then, our agents at the airport will manage the choreography. Choreography. She used that word choreography like we were staging a ballet and not preventing a murder. But I understood. Every detail mattered. Every movement had to be precise. One wrong step and the whole operation collapsed. 9 days, I said. 9 days. Keep doing what you're doing, Mr. Whitfield. You're handling this remarkably well. I wasn't handling it well. I was holding it together with duct tape and 31 years of cockpit discipline. Every morning I woke up and reached for Linda. Every afternoon I drove past the turn to Ethan's condo and gripped the wheel until my knuckles went white. Every night I stared at the ceiling and asked questions nobody could answer. But I kept moving. I kept texting. I kept pretending. Because in 9 days, the wheels would touch down and the approach would be over. And I always landed my planes. The 12th of April, 2025. I woke at 4:15 a.m. 15 minutes before my alarm. The desert was still dark outside. The stars fading at the edges, like someone was slowly turning up a dimmer. I lay in bed for a moment, feeling the weight of what was coming settle over me like a lead blanket. This was the day. I showered. Dressed in the clothes I'd laid out the night before: khaki shorts, a light blue polo, hiking sandals, tourist clothes, the costume of a happy father heading to paradise. I packed my carry-on with deliberate care. Sunscreen, a paperback I wouldn't read, a camera I wouldn't use, and the recording device Diana's team had sewn into the lining of my jacket. It looked like a button. It captured everything within 30 feet. My suitcase was already by the door. I'd packed it 3 days ago again, playing the role. Excited father. Eager traveler. A man who couldn't wait to see the ocean. I made coffee. 1 cup. Not 2. I'd stopped making 2 months ago. But the reflex still fired every morning, my hand reaching for the second mug before my brain caught up. I drank standing at the kitchen window, watching the first pink light touch the top of Camelback Mountain. Linda and I used to watch this together. She'd lean against me, both hands around her cup, and say, "Best show in town, Captain." Every single morning for 33 years. At 5 a.m. my phone buzzed. Ethan. Morning, Dad. Ready for takeoff? See you at the gate. I typed back. Born ready, son. See you there. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I'd expected tremors, nausea, some physical sign of the terror coiled in my chest. But there was nothing. Just calm. The same calm that used to descend over me at the top of an approach in bad weather, when every instrument was active, every system was engaged, and the only thing left to do was fly the plane. Marcus pulled into my driveway at 5:20. He was driving me to the airport we'd agreed on this weeks ago. If Ethan saw Marcus's truck in the departures lane, we'd explain it easily. My buddy gave me a ride so I didn't have to pay for parking. Simple. Unremarkable. I locked the front door and paused. My house, Linda's house, our house stood quiet in the pre-dawn gray. The garden she'd planted was overgrown now, the roses wild and reaching. I'd been meaning to trim them. I'd been meaning to do a lot of things. I'll come back, I told the house silently. I'll come back and take care of things properly. The drive to Sky Harbor took 22 minutes. Marcus and I didn't talk much. He had the radio on low classic rock, Eagles, Take It Easy. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. At a red light on 44th Street, he finally said, "You remember that crosswind landing in Anchorage? 94? 37 knots. Gusting 42. Ice on the left wing. You were cool as ice yourself. I was sweating through my shirt, and you were humming a song, Sinatra. Fly me to the moon." Marcus laughed a short, tight sound. "That's who you are, James. That's who you've always been. The guy who hums Sinatra when everything's going sideways." He glanced at me. "You're going to be fine today." "I know," I said. And I meant it. Not because I wasn't afraid I was, but because I'd done the preparation. I'd built the plan. I had people around me who wouldn't let it fail. That was enough. Sky Harbor was already busy at 5:45 a.m. The early business flights. The red eyes returning. The vacation crowds with their rolling bags and their neck pillows and their oblivious excitement. I stepped out of Marcus's truck at Terminal 4 departures. He got out too, came around, and pulled me into a hug. Tight. Brief. The way men hug when words aren't enough. "Call me when it's done," he said. "I will." I walked into the terminal with my carry-on over one shoulder and my suitcase rolling behind me. The automatic doors parted, and the air conditioning hit me like a wall. I joined the check-in queue for Hawaiian Airlines Flight 62, Scottsdale to Lihue via Honolulu. The line moved slowly. A family with 3 kids and too many bags. A honeymooning couple taking selfies. An elderly woman in a wheelchair being helped by a skycap. Normal. Everyone around me was living a normal Saturday morning. Nobody knew that the gray-haired man in the blue polo was wearing a recording device and walking into an FBI operation. I checked in. Got my boarding pass seat 24F. Window. Economy. Ethan and Vanessa were in 4A and 4B, first class. Of course they were. They'd put the man they planned to kill in the back of the plane while they drank champagne at the front. Something about that detail, small, petty, almost absurd, made me angrier than the insurance policy, angrier than the email, angrier than the photograph sent to a stranger. I cleared security. Took off my shoes, put my jacket on the belt, walked through the scanner with my arms raised. The recording device passed without a flicker. Diana's people knew what they were doing. On the other side, I collected my things and walked toward Gate B7, and there they were. Ethan stood near the window, coffee in hand, wearing a Hawaiian shirt the kind tourists buy at Target, bright blue with white flowers. Vanessa sat in a gate chair, legs crossed, scrolling her phone, wearing linen pants and oversized sunglasses pushed up on her head. They looked like any young couple waiting for a vacation flight. Happy, relaxed, innocent. Ethan saw me and his face lit up. "Dad." He strode over and wrapped me in a hug, one-armed, careful not to spill his coffee. "You made it. I was worried you'd oversleep. Couldn't sleep at all," I said. "True." Too excited. Vanessa stood, smiled that practiced smile, and kissed my cheek. Her lips were cold. "The adventure begins," she said. "Are you ready?" "More than you know," I said. We sat together for 20 minutes. Ethan talked about the hotel ocean view. King bed for me. A balcony where I could have my morning coffee. Vanessa showed me photos on her phone of restaurants she'd bookmarked. They were good. Convincing. If I didn't know if I hadn't seen the emails. The bank records. The photograph. I would have believed every word. I would have boarded that plane feeling loved. At 7:48 a.m., a woman in a TSA uniform approached our row. Professional, unsmiling. "Mr. James Whitfield?" I looked up. That's me. Sir, you've been selected for a random secondary security screening. If you could come with me, please. It'll only take a few minutes. Ethan frowned. What? Dad. It's fine, son. I stood, grabbed my carry-on. Happens all the time. Random checks. I'll meet you on the plane. But boarding starts in. I'll be quick. Don't worry. I squeezed his shoulder, looked him in the eye, smiled the way a father smiles at a son he trusts completely. Then I turned and followed the TSA agent down the corridor, around a corner, through a door marked Authorized Personnel Only, and out of my son's plan forever. Behind the door marked Authorized Personnel Only, a different world waited. The fluorescent-lit corridor smelled like industrial cleaner and jet fuel. The TSA agent, whose real name, I'd later learn, was Special Agent Carmen Ortiz, walked briskly ahead of me, her shoes clicking on the linoleum. She didn't speak until we'd passed through a second security door and into a small, windowless office. Diana Reeves was already there. She stood behind a metal desk wearing a navy blazer and an expression I recognized controlled urgency. The same look I'd seen on approach controllers during diversions. Things were moving fast, and everyone needed to be exactly where they were supposed to be. Mr. Whitfield. Right on schedule. She checked her watch. Your son's flight board's in 2 minutes. He'll look for you in the boarding queue and assume you're caught up in the screening. By the time he's seated in first class, the cabin door will close and it'll be too late to deplane. He'll text you. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. Ethan. Dad, where are you? They're boarding. Diana nodded at me. I typed. Still in secondary screening. They're checking my bag. Some issue with my shaving kit. Go ahead and board. I'll be last on. 3 dots. Then. Okay, hurry. They're calling final group. 2 minutes later. Dad, they're closing the door. Are you coming? I typed. Just got cleared. Running. If I don't make it, they said they'll put me on the next flight. Don't worry. I'll meet you in Lihu tonight. A long pause, then. Okay, Dad. See you tonight. Love you. I stared at that heart emoji until Diana gently took the phone from my hand. He's on the aircraft, she said. A voice in her earpiece confirmed it. I could hear the tinny murmur. Cabin door closed. They're pushing back. Flight 6. 2 departs in 14 minutes. She set my phone on the desk. From this point, our communications team handles your text responses. They'll mirror your patterns, response time, punctuation, emoji use. Ethan won't know the difference. It was strange, handing over my voice. My words. Someone else would type, "Love you too, son," to a man who wanted me dead. And he'd believe it was me. The whole thing felt like a fever dream, the kind where everything looks normal but the gravity is wrong. Your flight departs gate C-22 at 9:30, Diana said, sliding a boarding pass across the desk. The name printed on it. Robert Chen. Seat 2A. First class. Direct to Lihu. You land at 1:45 p.m. local. A car will be waiting Agent Keone Hale, Honolulu field office. He'll take you to the safe house. And after that, you rest. You eat. You wait. April 14 is 48 hours away. Between now and then, our team handles everything. You don't leave the safe house, you don't make calls that aren't routed through us, and you don't go anywhere near the North Shore. She held my gaze. Your job for the next 2 days is to stay invisible. Can you do that? I've been invisible for months, I said. I'm good at it. Something flickered in Diana's eyes, sympathy. Maybe. But she didn't address it. She handed me a new phone. A bureau device. Pre-programmed with her number, Marcus's number, and an emergency line. Anything you need. Call. Day or night. Agent Ortiz escorted me through a service corridor, down an elevator, and into the terminal's secure airside transit area. I walked among travelers who had no idea I existed, just another anonymous passenger in a blue polo and hiking sandals, heading to a gate like everyone else. But I wasn't like everyone else. I was a ghost. A dead man walking in the wrong direction. Gate C. 22 was quiet. A small regional jet to Lihu. Half full. No families with screaming kids. No honeymoon couples with selfie sticks. Just business travelers and a few older tourists with hiking backpacks. I boarded with my head down, found seat 2A, and buckled in. The aircraft was a Boeing 737-800. I'd flown this exact variant for 11 years. I knew every sound it made, the hydraulic whine of the flaps, the thunk of the landing gear doors, the particular frequency of the engines at takeoff thrust. When we accelerated down the runway and the nose lifted, my body responded automatically. Hands relaxed, breathing steady, back pressed into the seat. For 31 years, this sensation had meant purpose, direction, control. Today it meant escape. 5 hours and 43 minutes across the Pacific. I didn't sleep. I couldn't read. I sat with my forehead against the window and watched the ocean unspool beneath us. Endless. Dark blue. Indifferent. Somewhere behind me, on a different plane, my son was watching the same ocean and imagining my death. Was he nervous? Excited? Did he feel guilt? Or had he gone past that into the numb territory where a person becomes a number and a murder becomes a transaction? I thought about the last time Ethan and I had flown together. He was 19, home from college for winter break. I'd taken him up in my Cessna 182 a clear December morning over the Superstition Mountains. He'd sat in the right seat, hands on the yoke, and I'd let him fly straight and level for 20 minutes. His face had been pure joy, pure trust. He'd looked at me and said, "This is freedom, Dad. This is what freedom feels like. Freedom." He'd felt free in the sky with me. And now, he was using the sky to send me somewhere I'd never come back from. The plane began its descent at 1:20 p.m. Hawaiian time. The island appeared below, green and jagged, ringed with white surf. Kauai. The Garden Isle. The place where I was supposed to die in 2 days. On a trail my son had chosen specifically because the cliffs were high enough, and the ocean was deep enough to swallow a body whole. Instead, I was landing ahead of schedule. Alive. Alert. Ready. We touched down at Lihu Airport at 1:47 p.m. Smooth landing, the pilot greased it. Barely a bump. I waited until the cabin cleared, then walked off the jet bridge into the open-air terminal. Warm salt air hit my face. Plumeria. Ocean. Something sweet and green I couldn't name. A man waited at the bottom of the escalator. Hawaiian, mid-30s, built solid, wearing an aloha shirt and carrying a small sign that read Mr. Chen. He caught my eye and nodded once. "Agent Keone Hale." I walked toward him, and he extended a hand. Firm grip. Calm eyes. "Mr. Whitfield, welcome to Kauai." His voice was low, meant only for me. Cars outside. 20-minute drive. "You're going to be safe." Safe. The word felt foreign. I'd spent so many weeks in survival mode, monitoring, pretending, calculating, that the idea of safety seemed almost suspicious, like a false reading, like an instrument telling you everything's fine right before the engine flames out. But I followed him. Through the small terminal, past the lay stands and the rental car counters, into the Hawaiian afternoon. The parking lot shimmered with heat. Keone led me to a black SUV with tinted windows, opened the rear door, and waited. I climbed in. The door closed. The air conditioning hummed, and for the first time in 26 days, I closed my eyes and exhaled a long, shaking breath that carried the weight of every lie I'd told, every text I'd forced myself to type, every smile I'd aimed at the 2 people who'd planned my funeral. 48 hours. Then it would be over. I just had to stay invisible a little longer. The safe house was a modest plantation-style cottage in Poipu, on the South Shore. White clapboard, green roof, a lanai shaded by a massive banyan tree. From the outside, it looked like any vacation rental. Inside, it was a command center. 3 monitors on the dining table showed live feeds, one from a camera positioned outside Ethan and Vanessa's hotel in Princeville, one tracking Kai Nakamura's movements via GPS on his vehicle, and one displaying a real-time transcript of communications intercepted from Ethan's phone. 2 agents worked quietly at laptops, a woman named Sato and a young man named Burke. They barely looked up when Keone walked me in. "Your room's in the back," Keone said. "Fridge is stocked. Anything you need, ask. But don't leave the property, don't use your personal phone, and don't go near any windows facing the road." I nodded. The room was small, a twin bed, a dresser, a window that looked out onto a garden thick with ginger and bird of paradise. I set my bag down and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress creaked. Somewhere outside, a rooster crowed. It was 2:30 the afternoon, and I was hiding in paradise while my son flew toward me thinking I was already dead. Man. Walking. Ethan and Vanessa's flight landed at 7:22 p.m. I know because Agent Sato announced it from the other room. Calm, factual, like a gate agent reading arrivals. Flight 62 on ground. Subjects deplaning. I came out and watched the monitor. The hotel camera showed the lobby entrance a wide-angle, slightly grainy feed. At 8:14 p.m., a rideshare pulled up. And there they were. Ethan in his tourist Hawaiian shirt, pulling a rolling bag. Vanessa in white linen, oversized sunglasses even in the dark. They walked into the lobby like any couple arriving for vacation. Relaxed, unhurried. Vanessa's hand resting lightly on Ethan's arm. "They're checking in," Burke said, watching the transcript feed. "Text incoming." The screen updated. Ethan to James. Bureau-operated number. "Just got to the hotel, Dad. Where are you? Your room is 312. Ours is 315. Come find us when you're settled." The Bureau's comms agent responded as me. "Hey, son. Got in a couple hours ago. Already unpacked. Feeling jet-lagged, going to crash early tonight. Breakfast tomorrow? 8 a.m. at the restaurant downstairs?" Ethan. "Perfect. Get some rest, old man. See you at 8. I watched this exchange appear on screen in real time, someone else's words wearing my voice like a mask. It was disorienting. Effective. Ethan had no idea he was talking to a ghost. Tomorrow's choreography. Diana's voice came through on a conference call, patched into the cottage's speaker system. She was still in Phoenix, but managing operations remotely. "Mr. Whitfield, you will not be at breakfast. Our agent male, 60-ish, gray hair will be in the restaurant at a corner table at 7:45 a.m. If Ethan looks around, he'll see someone who could be you at a distance. The Bureau will text from your number at 7:55. Running late. Order me coffee. Be there in 10. Then at 8:05. Actually feeling sick. Think the plane food got me. Going to stay in bed. Rain check for lunch? This gives us day 1 without face-to-face contact. And day 2? I asked. Day 2. The boat tour. Ethan booked 3 tickets. Will excuse you again. Still not feeling great. You guys go ahead. I'll rest up for the hike tomorrow. It maintains the pattern of a mildly ill older traveler. Believable, not suspicious. He won't come to my room. Your room is booked under your name. But our agent is occupying it. If Ethan knocks, our man answers through the door, voice muffled. Says he's resting. Asks to be left alone. We've rehearsed the scenario, every contingency covered, every angle managed. I was starting to understand why Diana had been assigned this case. She thought 12 moves ahead and left nothing to chance. That night, I lay in the small bed listening to the island, sounds coqui frogs, whined through the palms, distant surf. Sleep came in broken fragments. I dreamed of Linda. She was standing at the edge of a cliff, not falling, just standing looking out at an ocean so blue it hurt. She turned to me and said, "Don't let them take what we built, James." Then she was gone and I was awake, staring at darkness, my heart hammering. Day 1 unfolded exactly as Diana planned. The breakfast excuse worked. The transcript showed Ethan texting, "Feel better, Dad." Vanessa says drink ginger tea at 8:12 a.m. Casual, no alarm. He spent the day with Vanessa Poole. Lunch at a beachfront grill. Shopping in Hanalei. Normal tourist behavior. The monitoring team logged everything. At 3:47 p.m., something changed. Burke straightened at his laptop. Contact movement. Kai Nakamura just left his residence in Princeville, heading south on Kuhio Highway. We watched the GPS dot move down the coast. It stopped at a trailhead, the Kalalau Trail parking area. "He's scouting," Agent Sato said, confirming the route for day 4. The GPS showed Kai stationary for 43 minutes. Then movement again, not back toward Princeville, but east, toward the hotel. My stomach tightened. "He's going to the Street Regis," Burke said. "That's where your son is staying." The hotel camera caught him at 5:02 p.m. A man I'd never seen walked into the lobby. Lean, tan, wearing board shorts and a faded surf t-shirt. Dark hair pulled back in a short ponytail. He moved casually, like someone who belonged. He sat at the lobby bar, ordered a drink, and waited. At 5:11 p.m., Ethan appeared. Alone. He walked to the bar, sat one stool away from Kai, and ordered a beer. They didn't look at each other. They didn't speak, not visibly. But Burke zoomed in on Ethan's left hand. Under the bar, barely visible, he slid something toward Kai. A small envelope. White. Thin. Kai's hand covered it. One smooth motion there. Then gone. Into his pocket. "Cash," Diana said through the speaker. "Second payment installment. We have it on camera." The two men sat for another 4 minutes, not speaking, not acknowledging each other's existence. Then Kai finished his drink, stood, and walked out. Ethan remained at the bar for another 10 minutes, drinking his beer, scrolling his phone. The transcript updated. Ethan to Vanessa. "Done. Tomorrow, we just enjoy. Day after, it happens." Vanessa's reply. "Good. Don't text me about it again." I read those words on the screen and felt something shift inside me, some final, load-bearing wall that had been holding up the last remnant of denial. Day after, it happens. My daughter-in-law confirming my murder with the emotional register of someone confirming a dinner reservation. Day 2. The boat tour. Ethan and Vanessa went. I stayed in the cottage and watched their GPS dots move along the Napali coastline, the same coastline where, tomorrow, a man with $15,000 in his pocket would be waiting to push me into the ocean. Diana called at 6 p.m. "Tomorrow. April 14. Are you ready?" "Yes," I said. "Remember, you won't be on the trail. Our undercover agent takes your place. Male, mid-60s, gray hair, similar build. He's trained in close protection and hand-to-hand. When Kai makes his move, our agent subdues him while the arrest team closes in. Simultaneously, agents take Ethan and Vanessa at the hotel. It's over in 60 seconds. 60 seconds. After weeks of planning, months of deception, a lifetime of trust destroyed, it would end in 60 seconds on a cliff above the Pacific. "Get some sleep, Mr. Whitfield," Diana said. "Tomorrow you get your life back." I didn't sleep. I sat on the lanai in the dark, listening to the ocean I couldn't see, and I prayed. Not to anyone specific, just out loud, into the warm Hawaiian night. I prayed for this to end. I prayed for the strength to face whatever came after. And despite everything, despite the emails, the cash, the photograph, the forged policy, I prayed for my son, because he was still my son. Even now, Even after everything. God help me. He was still my son. The 14th of April, 2025. I woke before dawn, not from sleep, because sleep never came, but from the half-conscious state I drifted in and out of all night. The cottage was already alive. Agent Sato sat at her monitors, a cup of coffee untouched beside her. Burke was on the phone, speaking in low, rapid sentences. Keone stood by the back door, arms crossed, watching the darkness thin. "Morning, Mr. Whitfield," Sato said without looking up. "Subjects are still in their rooms. No movement since midnight." I poured coffee. My hands were steady, that cockpit calm again, settling over me like a second skin. The digital clock on the microwave read 5:17 a.m. At 5:34, Diana's voice came through the speaker system. "All teams. Status check. Poipu? Poipu online." Keone responded. "Principal is awake and secure. Trail team?" A different voice, male, gravelly. "Trail team in position. Agent Caldwell is dressed and ready. Departing for Ka Beach Trailhead at 0600. Agent Caldwell. The man wearing my face today. Mid-60s, gray-haired, similar build. He'd hiked the Kalalau Trail as James Whitfield, while I sat in a cottage 12 miles away and watched on a screen. The thought made my skin crawl, not because of the danger to Caldwell, who was trained for exactly this, but because it made the whole thing feel like theater. My life reduced to a costume another man could wear. Hotel team? Hotel team staged. 4 agents in position, 2 in the lobby, 2 in the corridor outside room 315. Arrest warrants loaded and ready. Honolulu support? Helicopter on standby at Lihu. Medical on call. All clear. Diana's voice carried the clipped authority of someone who had rehearsed this moment 100 times in her mind. "Listen up. Today's operation is time critical. The window opens when Kai Nakamura makes an overt act against our undercover. Not before. We need him to commit to physically engage. Anything less, and his lawyer argues he was just a trail guide who happened to be there. We get one shot at this. Nobody moves early." "Understood," said every voice on the line. At 6 a.m., Agent Caldwell departed. I watched his GPS.blue steady move from the staging area to the Key Beach parking lot. Burke pulled up a body camera feed on the center monitor, grainy, slightly bouncing with Caldwell's steps. I could see the trailhead sign. Kalalau Trail. 11 miles. Hazardous conditions. Experienced hikers only. At 6:15, the transcript feed updated. The Bureau's comms agent, texting as me from the cloned phone. "Morning, son. Heading to the trailhead. Beautiful morning. Can't wait for our hike." Ethan's response came at 6:18. "On my way, Dad. Running a little behind. Start without me, and I'll catch up. Trail's pretty straightforward for the first 2 miles. Diana's voice. "Note that. He's telling our James to go ahead alone. He wants separation. He wants the undercover to be at mile 6, before Ethan arrives anywhere near the trail." "He's not coming," I said. The realization hit me like a gut punch, even though I should have expected it. He was never going to hike with me. He just needed me on the trail alone. "Correct," Diana said. "We anticipated this." Caldwell proceeds solo. Ethan's absence doesn't change the operational plan. At 6:22, a second GPS dot appeared on the map, read Kai Nakamura, moving from his Princeville residence toward the trailhead. My jaw tightened. "Contact is mobile," Sato announced. "ETA. To Key Beach. 14 minutes. I sat at the table and watched the 2 dots, blue and red, converging on the same strip of coastline. The Kalalau Trail was an 11-mile ribbon carved into cliffs that dropped 1,000 feet to the ocean. At mile 6, the trail narrowed to barely 3 feet wide, hugging the cliff face with nothing but air and rock and water below. No guardrails, no witnesses, no cell service. The perfect place to kill a man. Caldwell's body camera showed the trail unfolding. Lush green. Mud slick. Narrow. The ocean appeared in glimpses through gaps in the vegetation. Impossibly blue. Impossibly far below. He moved steadily, not rushing, playing the part of a 67-year-old man enjoying a morning hike. Pausing to take photographs. Adjusting his pack. Breathing audibly. At 7:45 a.m., Caldwell reached mile 4. The trail was emptier now. Most day hikers turned back at mile 2, where the views were easy and the path was wide. Beyond that, the terrain grew serious. Steep switchbacks. Stream crossings. Sections where the trail crumbled to loose red dirt above vertical drops. Contact on trail, Burke said. Kai started hiking at 6:41. Moving fast. He'll close the distance within the hour. At the hotel, things were quieter. The camera showed Ethan leaving his room at 7:30, wearing board shorts and a t-shirt, not hiking clothes. He took the elevator down, walked to the pool area, and sat at a lounge chair with his phone. Vanessa remained in the room. He's establishing his alibi, Diana said. Visible at the pool. Surrounded by witnesses. When the call comes that his father fell from a cliff, he'll be sitting in a lounge chair with 20 tourists who can confirm he was nowhere near that trail. The calculation of it. The choreography. Not just planning a murder, but engineering the aftermath, the story they'd tell police, the grief they'd perform, the sympathy they'd collect. I thought of Ethan at the funeral, hand pressed to his heart, saying, "My father was an incredible man." Past tense. He'd already rehearsed it. 8:30 a.m. Caldwell reached mile 5. The trail narrowed. The vegetation thinned. The drops grew longer and more exposed. His body camera showed the cliff edge 2 feet away, then 1 foot, then nothing but blue air and white surf 1,000 feet below. Contact at mile 4.7, Sato said. Closing. Estimated intercept at mile 6 in approximately 15 minutes. 15 minutes. I gripped the edge of the table. My knuckles went white. Trail team. Confirm positions, Diana said. Alpha team at mile 5.5. Concealed above the ridgeline. Visual on the trail. Bravo team at mile 6.3. Below the trail in a rock alcove. Ready to close from behind. Caldwell? Status? The body camera audio crackled. Caldwell's voice, calm as pond water. Approaching mile 6 marker. Trail width approximately 30 inches. Cliff drop to my left, approximately 800 to 1,000 feet. I have line of sight roughly 40 meters ahead. No visual on contact yet. Copy. Maintain pace. Let him come to you. I leaned forward. The body camera showed the trail curving around a rock, outcropping red dirt, green scrub, the endless blue ocean below. Caldwell walked steadily, his breathing measured, his footsteps crunching on loose gravel. Then at 8:47 a.m., a figure appeared on the trail ahead, coming toward Caldwell not from behind. Moving with the easy, athletic stride of someone who knew this trail intimately. Dark hair and a ponytail. Board shorts. A small day pack. Kai Nakamura. Rounding the curve 50 meters ahead. Walking directly toward the man he believed was James Whitfield. Visual on contact, Caldwell said. Quiet. Professional. 50 meters. Closing. My heart stopped beating. Or it beat so fast, it felt like stopping. The monitor showed 2 men approaching each other on a strip of trail barely wide enough for one, a cliff above, oblivion below, and the whole Pacific spread out beneath them like a grave. All teams hold, Diana said. Hold until overt action. Hold. 40 meters. 30. 20. The body camera showed Kai Nakamura approaching with the loose confidence of a man on his home turf. He smiled. As he drew near, a casual, friendly smile. Just 2 hikers passing on a narrow trail. Nothing unusual. Nothing wrong. Morning, Kai said. His voice came through the body camera audio clear, relaxed. Beautiful day for it? Yeah, sure is, Caldwell replied, playing the part. 67. Slightly winded. Retired pilot on vacation. You heading back already? Nah, just scouting conditions up ahead. Trail gets a little sketchy past the next bend. Kai stopped walking. 10 feet away. He shifted his weight, adjusted his pack strap. You out here alone? My son was supposed to join me, but he's running late. Caldwell paused, turned slightly to look at the ocean view exactly the way a tourist would, presenting his back, creating opportunity, giving Kai the opening he'd been paid to exploit. I stopped breathing. On the monitor, the body camera showed the cliff edge, a crumbling lip of red dirt, a few tufts of grass, then nothing. 800 feet of empty air, and the Pacific churning white against rocks below. One push. That's all it would take. One push and gravity would do the rest. Kai didn't move. Not yet. He stood behind Caldwell. The camera couldn't see him now, but the audio picked up his breathing. Slow. Measured. The breathing of a man making a decision. Hey, Kai said. You should check out this view right here. Step a little closer to the edge, you can see the sea caves from this angle. Caldwell took one step toward the edge, then stopped. Actually, Kai said, and his voice changed, dropped lower, harder. Let me show you. Movement. Sudden. Violent. The body camera jerked a hand, grabbing Caldwell's pack strap from behind, yanking him backward, and then driving him forward toward the edge. The audio exploded with sound scuffing boots, grunting. Caldwell's controlled shout of, "Now! Now! Now!" Everything happened at once. The body camera whipped sideways as Caldwell pivoted, a trained maneuver, using Kai's own momentum against him. He grabbed Kai's wrist, twisted, dropped his center of gravity. The two men grappled on the narrow trail, bodies pressed together, boots scraping loose rock. The cliff edge inches away. FBI. Don't move. FBI. Alpha Team erupted from the ridge above, 3 agents in tactical gear, weapons drawn, descending the slope in controlled bursts. Bravo Team appeared from behind the rock outcropping at mile 6.3, sprinting up the trail. Voices overlapped, shouting, commanding. The controlled chaos of an arrest in motion. On the body camera, the image stabilized. Caldwell had Kai face down on the trail, one arm pinned behind his back. Kai's cheek pressed into the red dirt. An agent reached them, slapped cuffs on Kai's wrists, and the struggling stopped. It was over. Contact secured, someone said. Breathing hard. Contact in custody. No injuries. The timestamp on the monitor read 8:49 a.m. 2 minutes. The entire confrontation, from Kai's hand on Caldwell's pack to the handcuffs clicking shut, had taken 2 minutes. I sat back in my chair. The breath I'd been holding came out in a sound I didn't recognize. Half gasp. Half sob. Keone put a hand on my shoulder, but said nothing. Hotel team. Diana's voice cut through. Steady. Commanding. Execute. The hotel camera feed became the center of attention. 2 agents, a man and a woman in plain clothes, approached room 315. A keycard flashed. The door opened. I heard the audio through Burke's laptop. FBI. Vanessa Whitfield. You're under arrest. Hands where we can see them. Do not move. A scream. Short, sharp, more rage than fear. Then sounds of movement, commands repeated, the metallic click of handcuffs, 12 seconds from door opening to custody. Subject 2 secured. The agent reported. Vanessa Whitfield, in custody. Room clear. Pool team, subject 3. The exterior camera caught it. 2 agents approached Ethan's lounge chair from both sides, casual, unhurried, giving him no escape route. One flashed a badge. Ethan's face, visible even on the grainy feed, went from confusion to recognition to absolute terror in the span of a single heartbeat. He didn't run. He didn't fight. He just sat there, frozen, as the agent said, words I couldn't hear through the camera's limited audio. Then he stood, slowly. His arms hung at his sides like they'd forgotten their purpose. An agent turned him gently, guided his wrists behind his back, and cuffed him, my son, in handcuffs, by a swimming pool. On the vacation he'd planned as my execution, I watched him being escorted through the lobby head down. Shoulders collapsed. That Hawaiian shirt absurd now. Garish. The costume of a man playing a role that had just ended catastrophically. Vanessa appeared from the elevator a moment later, flanked by 2 agents, her face twisted into something I can only describe as feral. She was talking fast, loud, but the audio didn't carry clearly enough to make out words. Her body language screamed fury, not regret. All subjects in custody, Diana announced over the speaker. Operation complete. 0 casualties. 0 injuries. Excellent work, everyone. The room exhaled. Sato leaned back in her chair. Burke closed his laptop. Keone squeezed my shoulder and said, quietly, "It's over, Mr. Whitfield." But it wasn't. Not for me. The operation was over, the tactical, logistical, law enforcement operation that had consumed 26 days and dozens of agents. That part was done. But the aftermath, the trial, the testimony, the years of therapy, the nightmares, the questions that would never have answers, that was just beginning. Diana's voice returned, softer now. "Mr. Whitfield, are you there?" "I'm here," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "I'm going to need you to come to the Lihue field office this afternoon for a formal statement. Agent Hale will drive you. It'll take a few hours. After that, you're free to go wherever you want." She paused. "You did an extraordinary thing, James. Most people in your position couldn't have done what you did." I didn't feel extraordinary. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left only the shell, the body, the bones, the gray hair, and the lined face, and the hands that had once held my son as an infant and now would never hold him again. "Thank you, Agent Reeves," I said, "for keeping me alive." "That's the job," she said. "But you're welcome." Keone drove me to Lihue in the black SUV. The island passed in a blur of green and gold sugarcane fields, red dirt roads, mountains wrapped in clouds. I sat in the back seat and stared at nothing. At one point, Keone glanced in the rearview mirror and said, "You want to stop somewhere? Get some air?" "No," I said. "Keep driving." At the field office, I gave my statement. 4 hours. Every detail, from the October dinner to the airport to this morning. I signed documents. I answered questions. I identified photographs. When they showed me the arrest photo of Ethan, front-facing, blank expression, that Hawaiian shirt, I looked at it for a long time. The boy who used to say, "I'm flying, Daddy." The man in handcuffs. How do you hold both of those truths in the same heart? I didn't know then. I'm not sure I know now. But I'm learning. Every day, I'm learning. They kept Ethan and Vanessa in separate holding cells at the Lihue Federal Facility. Kai Nakamura was transported to a different location. Diana didn't tell me where, and I didn't ask. What mattered was that all 3 were behind locked doors, and for the first time in months, nobody was planning my death. I spent that night in the safe house. Same small bed, same garden outside the window. But everything felt different. The air lighter, the silence softer. I slept for 11 hours straight. When I woke, it was 6 a.m. On April 15, and Agent Keone was in the kitchen making eggs. "Diana called," he said, sliding a plate toward me. "Your son wants to talk to you." I set down my fork. "What?" "Ethan requested to see you. Through his lawyer. Diana says it's your choice, completely voluntary. You don't have to." "When?" "This morning. 10 o'clock. I ate the eggs without tasting them. I showered. I put on the same blue polo from 3 days ago, the only clean shirt I had. And at 9:45 a.m., Keone drove me to the federal holding facility on Rice Street in Lihu. The room was small and beige. A metal table bolted to the floor. 2 chairs on one side, one on the other. A camera in the corner with a red light blinking steadily. Diana was there, standing by the door, arms crossed. "You don't have to say anything," she said. "You don't have to answer his questions. If at any point you want to leave, you stand up and walk out. Understood?" "Understood." She opened the door. Ethan came in, escorted by a federal marshal. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit, a color I'd never seen on my son, a color that turned his skin gray and made him look 10 years older than 32. His wrists were cuffed in front of him. His eyes were red-rimmed, swollen. When he saw me, his face crumpled. "Dad!" His voice broke on the single syllable. The marshal guided him to the chair across from me. Removed the cuffs. Diana had authorized it. A small mercy. Ethan sat with his hands flat on the table, fingers trembling. He didn't look at me. He stared at the metal surface as if it contained answers. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The fluorescent light hummed. The camera blinked. I studied my son's face, the face I'd watched grow from infancy to manhood, and searched for the boy I knew. He was in there somewhere, buried under debt and desperation and whatever Vanessa had poured into his ear for 2 years. He was in there. "I don't know where to start," Ethan finally said. "Start with why." He closed his eyes. A tear escaped, just one, tracking down his left cheek. "The debt. You know about the debt. I know the numbers. I want to hear it from you." So he told me. Haltingly, with pauses that stretched into gulfs. It had started in 2022. A client took him to Talking Stick Casino for a business dinner. He'd never gambled before, not seriously. But that night, he won $8,000 on blackjack. And something clicked in his brain. The rush, the control, the illusion that he could beat the odds through intelligence and nerve. Within 6 months, he was going twice a week. By the end of 2023, he'd lost $140,000. He'd refinanced his condo without telling anyone. Maxed 3 credit cards. Started betting online, offshore platforms, sports, anything. The losses compounded. The wins grew rarer. He was chasing. Always chasing. And the hole kept getting deeper. "I went to Victor Salinas in June 2024, Ethan said. His voice was barely audible. "The week Mom died. I needed $180,000 to cover immediate debts, or I was going to lose everything. The condo, the firm, my license. Victor gave me the money. And then I owed him $180,000 at 22% interest. And Vanessa," Ethan's jaw tightened. Something shifted in his eyes, a flash of something complicated. Anger. Maybe. Or the memory of anger. Vanessa knew about the debt. She found out in August 2024, went through my laptop, saw the statements. I thought she'd leave me. He laughed, a terrible, hollow sound. She didn't leave. She said she had a plan. The insurance policy. She found the idea online. Some true crime forum, how people get away with insurance fraud. She said it was easy. That nobody investigates accidental deaths abroad. That you were old. He stopped, swallowed. She said you were old and grieving, and that nobody would question it. My hands were flat on the table, mirroring his. I kept them there, deliberately steady. Visible. Controlled. Inside, something was tearing apart, slow and irreversible, like fabric separating along a seam. She said if we didn't do something, Victor's people would come for both of us. She said they'd already threatened her. I don't know if that was true. I don't know what was true with her. She said a lot of things. The stairs. I said. The carpet tack strip. Was that her? Ethan nodded. Small, quick, ashamed. She did it when we came for dinner in October. She went upstairs and she said it was a test, to see if it could look accidental. When it didn't work when you were fine, she said we needed a bigger plan, somewhere remote, somewhere with cliffs. And you agreed. He looked at me. Finally. Directly. His eyes meeting mine for the first time. The pain there was real. I'd spent 31 years reading instruments, reading faces, reading situations, and I knew, looking at my son in that orange jumpsuit, that the pain was real. But so was the choice. He'd had 1,000 moments to say no, 1,000 opportunities to walk away, to call me, to confess. He hadn't taken any of them. I agreed. He whispered. I told myself it wasn't real, that it wouldn't actually happen, that something would stop it. I told myself. His voice shattered. He pressed both hands over his face and wept, full, shaking sobs that made his shoulders convulse. The sound filled the room, raw and animal and terrible. I sat and watched my son cry. I didn't reach for him. I didn't offer comfort. Not because I didn't want to. God knows part of me wanted to cross that table and hold him the way I had when he was small and frightened. But comfort wasn't what he needed. Truth was. Consequence was. You sent my photograph to a stranger, I said quietly, so he'd know which man to kill. Ethan dropped his hands. His face was wrecked, blotchy, swollen, snot running. I know. There's nothing I can say. No, there isn't. Silence again. Longer this time. The camera blinked. Somewhere beyond the walls, I could hear the ocean, faint, persistent, indifferent to whatever happened in this room. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Ethan said. His voice was raw, but steadier now. I know I don't deserve that. I just needed you to know. I'm glad it failed. I'm glad you're alive. And I know that doesn't matter. I know saying it doesn't fix anything. But it's true. I looked at him for a long time. My son. My only child. The boy who said I'm flying. Daddy. And meant it with his whole heart. I believe you, I said. And that's the worst part. I stood. Diana opened the door. I walked out without looking back. 2 days later, Diana called me at the safe house. I was sitting on the lanai watching myna birds fight over a piece of bread I'd dropped, thinking about nothing and everything at the same time. Vanessa's talking, Diana said. No preamble. That was her style. Her lawyer negotiated an interview in exchange for consideration at sentencing. She wants to give a full statement. I thought you should know what she said. Tell me. Better if you see it. Can you come in this afternoon? At 2 p.m. I was back in the Rice Street facility. Diana led me to an observation room, a narrow space with a one-way mirror looking into an interview suite. Vanessa sat on the other side of the glass, still in her orange jumpsuit, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup, no designer clothes, no Instagram filter. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked like a real person, and that real person looked furious. Her lawyer, a young woman in a gray suit, sat beside her. Across the table, 2 FBI agents I hadn't met before. Diana stood next to me in the observation room, tablet in hand, ready to annotate. This interview was conducted this morning, Diana said. I'm playing the recording. Watch. She pressed play on her tablet, and the audio synced with the image through the glass, a recording of what had happened in that same room hours earlier. Vanessa's voice filled the space, clear and cold. I'm not going to pretend I'm sorry for something that didn't happen, Vanessa said on the recording. Her chin was raised, her jaw set. Nobody died. Nobody got hurt. This was a financial arrangement that went wrong, and I'm willing to explain the full scope of my involvement in exchange for the Bureau's recommendation of a reduced sentence. The agent across from her, a man with silver temples and reading glasses, said, Go ahead, Miss Clark. From the beginning. Vanessa took a breath. And then she spoke for 47 minutes without stopping. She'd met Ethan at a networking event in February 2024. Not through chance, she'd targeted him. She'd seen his Instagram posts, the condo, the car, the real estate firm. She'd assumed he was wealthy. By the time she realized he was drowning in gambling debt, she was already living in his apartment, already dependent on his credit cards for the lifestyle her followers expected. I wasn't going to downgrade, she said flatly. I'd worked too hard building my brand. My audience expects a certain life. You can't be a luxury lifestyle influencer living in a studio apartment. So she'd stayed. And she'd planned. The old man had money, she said. My stomach turned at those words, the old man, but I stayed quiet. Diana's hand rested briefly on my arm, a silent, steadying. The house alone was worth $700,000. He had savings, pension, and he was 66, widowed, depressed, living alone. He was. She paused, searching for the word. Available, the agent asked. Available for what? For a solution. She'd researched it methodically. Diana's team had recovered her laptop's full browser history. Searches dating back to September 2024. Accidental death insurance payout timeline. Life insurance contestability period. Hiking deaths. Hawaii statistics. How long before life insurance pays out after accidental death? Na Pali Coast fatal falls. Hundreds of searches, spanning weeks, bookmarked and organized in a folder she'd titled Project Refresh. Project Refresh. That's what she called planning my murder. A rebrand. A content pivot. A fresh start funded by my corpse. The insurance policy was my idea, Vanessa continued. Ethan didn't know how to do it. He's not detail-oriented. I found the company, filled out the application, practiced the signature from a check the old man wrote us as a wedding gift. The forged signature passed because the company doesn't verify in person for online applications under $500,000. The $450,000 policy, why that amount? Sweet spot. High enough to clear the debts with money left over. Low enough not to trigger automatic fraud review. She said this casually, like she was explaining a marketing strategy to a junior associate. And the contact in Hawaii? Kai Nakamura? Found him on a forum. Encrypted. Took about 3 weeks of messaging to confirm he was real, and not a cop. A faint smile. Bitter. Self-mocking. Guess I was wrong about the cop part. She explained the payment structure, $15,000 total. $5,000 wired through cryptocurrency in March, routed through 3 wallets to obscure the trail. Another $5,000 in cash, delivered by Ethan at the hotel bar on April 13. The remaining $5,000 to be sent after confirmation of death. Whose idea was the staircase? The agent asked. Mine. I loosened the carpet tacks during the October dinner. 3 nails on the 3rd step. Enough to catch a foot. Not enough to look deliberate. If he'd broken his neck, we wouldn't have needed Hawaii. But he only sprained his wrist. She shrugged. So we went to Plan B. That shrug. I'll never forget it. My broken body at the bottom of my own stairs. And she shrugged, like it was a failed product launch. What was Ethan's role? Funding. Access. The emotional manipulation, keeping the old man happy, keeping him trusting us. The dinner invitation, the texts, the trip planning. Ethan's job was to be the loving son, so James never saw it coming. She paused. He was good at that part. He actually does love his father, which made it convincing. Do you believe Ethan was a willing participant? Vanessa's eyes sharpened. Something calculated moved behind them. Ethan agreed to everything. I didn't hold a gun to his head. He chose this. He chose paying off his debts over his father's life. That was his decision. The recording ended. Diana pressed pause. I stood in the observation room, my reflection ghosting over the glass, superimposed on the empty chair where Vanessa had sat. My face looked old. Older than 67. Older than I'd ever seen it. She shows no remorse, I said. No. Diana agreed. She doesn't. Her psychological evaluation classifies her as high on narcissistic and antisocial scales. She views people as resources. Your son was a resource. You were a resource. When resources stop being useful, she discards them or liquidates them. She would have done it again. If this had worked, if I'd died, she would have found another target eventually. Diana didn't deny it. The prosecutors believe so. They're pushing for the maximum: conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, wire fraud, solicitation, federal charges. No possibility of plea below 15 years. And Ethan, his cooperation helps. The confession, the details about Vanessa's leadership role, his lawyers arguing, diminished autonomy, gambling, addiction, financial coercion, Vanessa's manipulation. The prosecutors aren't unsympathetic. But he's still looking at 10 to 12 years. I nodded. I didn't argue for leniency. I didn't argue for harshness. I just nodded. Because what else was there? My son had made his choice. His wife had made hers. And the justice system would decide what those choices cost. Diana drove me back to the safe house herself that evening. The sun was setting over the ocean, orange and pink and impossible, the way Hawaiian sunsets always are. She pulled into the driveway and left the engine running. You'll need to return to Arizona for the trial, she said. July, most likely. Your testimony will be central. I'll be there. And James. She hesitated. The first time I'd seen her hesitate about anything. What your daughter-in-law said in that room. The way she talked about you. That's not a reflection of who you are. That's a reflection of who she is. I know, I said. But thank you for saying it. I went inside, sat on the lanai, and watched the last light drain from the sky. The old man. That's what I was to her. Not a father. Not a person. A line item. An obstacle between her and money. But I was still here. Still breathing. Still watching sunsets she'd never see again from behind prison walls. And that was enough. For now, that was enough. July 2025. Phoenix Federal Courthouse. The building stood like a monument to consequence, all glass and concrete, American flags hanging limp in the desert heat. I'd driven past it 100 times over the years without ever going inside. Now I walked through the metal detectors with Marcus beside me, wearing the same Navy suit I'd worn to Linda's funeral, and I thought, this is where my family ends. The trial lasted 4 weeks. 4 weeks of evidence, testimony, objections, and the slow, methodical dismantling of everything Ethan and Vanessa had built in the dark. They were tried together, same conspiracy, same charges, but their defense strategies couldn't have been more different. Vanessa's lawyer argued entrapment, claimed the FBI had manufactured the crime by allowing it to proceed when they could have intervened earlier, argued that Vanessa's statements were coerced, that the interview was conducted without adequate legal counsel, that her psychological evaluation was biased. The judge dismissed the entrapment motion on day 3. The evidence was too overwhelming: the browser history, the forged signature, the cryptocurrency payments, the encrypted messages. Project Refresh appeared on a courtroom screen, and I watched the jury's faces harden. Ethan's lawyer took a different approach. Full cooperation, remorse, diminished capacity due to gambling addiction. His attorney, a veteran federal defender named Caswell, painted a picture of a man consumed by disease, terrorized by loan sharks, manipulated by a wife who exploited his weakness and turned it into a weapon. Ethan sat through every session in a gray suit that hung loose on his frame. He'd lost 20 pounds since April and stared at the table in front of him with the hollow expression of someone who'd already convicted himself. I testified on day 11. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Michelle Vega, a sharp-featured woman who spoke with surgical precision, walked me through it chronologically. The October dinner. Vanessa's questions about my finances. The staircase. The insurance policy. Marcus. The FBI. The airport. The switch. The arrest. I spoke for 3 hours, answering questions in the same steady voice I'd used for 31 years of cockpit communications. Clear. Factual. Sequential. The hardest moment came when Vega asked me to identify the photograph Ethan had sent to Kai Nakamura. She projected it on the courtroom screen me, sitting at Ethan's Thanksgiving table, smiling, holding a glass of wine. A happy father at a holiday meal. The photograph that was meant to be a target identification for my killer. Mr. Whitfield, can you confirm this is you in the photograph? That's me, I said. And this photograph was sent by your son to a hired contact for the purpose of identifying you as the target? Yes. How does that make you feel, Mr. Whitfield? Ethan's lawyer objected irrelevant, calls for speculation. The judge overruled. I looked at the photograph on the screen at myself, smiling, innocent, unaware that the moment being captured was simultaneously a family memory and a death warrant. Then I looked at Ethan, 10 feet away at the defense table. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his hands. It makes me feel like I lost my son before he ever made that plan, I said. Like the boy I raised was already gone by the time that photo was taken. And what was sitting across from me at that table was someone I don't recognize. The courtroom was very quiet. On day 14, the prosecution played the lobby camera footage from the Street Regis Ethan sliding the cash envelope to Kai at the bar. The body camera footage from Agent Caldwell on the trail. Kai's hands on Caldwell's pack. The arrest. Every moment captured, catalogued, undeniable. Vanessa's lawyer tried to argue the footage was inconclusive, that the envelope could have contained anything, that the trail encounter could have been coincidental. The jury didn't buy it. I could see it in their faces, 12 people who had watched a son pay a stranger to murder his father, and were now being asked to believe it was a misunderstanding. Day 18 brought Kai Nakamura's testimony. He'd taken a plea deal cooperating fully in exchange for a reduced sentence on the solicitation charge. He described the encrypted forum where Vanessa had contacted him, the negotiations, the payment schedule, the photograph, the plan. He described arriving at mile 6 and seeing a gray-haired man in a blue polo the target. He called me, and I watched the jurors flinch in making his move. He was clinical, detached, a professional describing a failed job. Diana testified on day 21. She outlined the entire investigation, the surveillance, the phone monitoring, the operational plan. She presented the intercepted texts. Day after. It happens. Don't text me about it again. She presented Vanessa's browser history. She presented the cryptocurrency trace. Every piece of evidence, layered onto the last like bricks in a wall. Closing arguments came on day 25. Prosecutor Vega stood before the jury and said something I'll never forget. This case is not complicated. A father trusted his son. A son chose money over that trust. And a wife designed the machinery of murder with the emotional detachment of someone planning a vacation. Because that's exactly what they called it, a vacation. A dream trip. A family getaway. The only person who wasn't supposed to come home was the one who'd done nothing wrong. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty. Both defendants. All charges. Vanessa Clark Whitfield. Conspiracy to commit murder. Insurance fraud. Wire fraud. Solicitation of murder. 4. Hire. Sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for 17. Ethan James Whitfield. Conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, wire fraud. Sentenced to 12 years. Eligible for parole in 10. When the sentences were read, Vanessa showed nothing. Not a flinch. Not a tear. She stared straight ahead with that calculating gaze, already running numbers, appeals, motions, angles, still working the problem, still looking for the exit. Ethan wept. Silently, steadily, his shoulders shaking under that loose gray suit. His lawyer put a hand on his back. Ethan didn't seem to notice. He was looking at me finally, directly, and his lips moved. No sound came out, but I read them clearly. "I'm sorry, Dad." I didn't nod. I didn't shake my head. I just looked back at him. My son. My only child. The last piece of Linda. Still walking this earth. And I let him see my face without armor. Without the cockpit calm. Without the steady pilot voice. Just a 67-year-old man whose heart had been broken by the one person he'd have died to protect. The marshals took them away. Different doors, different directions. Vanessa, to a federal women's facility in California. Ethan, to a medium security facility in Colorado. I watched both doors close, and then the courtroom was just a room again, wooden benches, fluorescent lights. The American flag standing motionless in the air conditioning. Marcus drove me home. Neither of us spoke for 40 minutes. When he pulled into my driveway, he turned off the engine and said, "It's done, James." "Yeah," I said. "It's done," but nothing felt finished. Everything felt like it was just beginning to hurt. After the trial, I went home to Scottsdale. The house on Camelback Road was waiting silent, dusty, full of ghosts. Linda's. Ethan's. Mine. I walked through the rooms like a visitor in a museum, touching things without feeling connected to them. The pot roast pan in the kitchen. The wingback chair by the fireplace. The staircase where I'd almost died, the third step. The one I'd hammered back into place with trembling hands a lifetime ago. I couldn't stay. I knew it the moment I walked through the door. This house held too much. Too many versions of a family that no longer existed. Too many echoes of laughter that had turned to lies. I needed distance. I needed air. I needed somewhere that didn't know my story. But first I had one more thing to do. January 2026. 9 months after the arrest. 6 months after the sentencing. I drove to FCI Englewood, a federal correctional institution in Littleton, Colorado, just south of Denver. Medium security. Ethan's home for the next decade. The drive took 11 hours. I could have flown old habit, easy solution, but I needed the road. The solitude. The time to think about what I was going to say to my son across a prison visiting table. The facility looked like a community college from the outside, low brown buildings, manicured grass, a parking lot full of ordinary cars belonging to ordinary people visiting people who'd done extraordinary damage. I signed in. Showed ID. Submitted to a pat-down. Followed a guard through 2 locked doors and into a visiting room with plastic chairs, vending machines, and a sadness so thick it had its own weather. Ethan came through a side door. He looked different. Thinner, but healthier, somehow. The shadows under his eyes had receded. His hair was shorter, neatly cut. He wore khaki prison-issued clothes and white sneakers that squeaked on the linoleum. When he saw me, he stopped walking. Just for a moment, a hitch in his step, like his body wasn't sure it had permission to approach. Then he came forward, sat across from me, put his hands on the table flat, palms down, the same way he'd done in Lihue 9 months ago. Old habit. Or maybe the only posture that felt safe. "Dad." His voice was quiet. "Careful. You came." "I came. I didn't think you would." "I almost didn't." We sat with that honesty between us like a third person at the table. Around us, other families were having their own difficult conversations, wives leaning across tables, children sitting on fathers' laps, mothers crying into tissues. The room hummed with 100 private griefs. "How are you?" I asked. Not because the answer mattered in any conventional sense, but because I was his father, and that question was embedded in me, like code. "I'm in a program," he said. "Gambling addiction recovery. 12 steps. Therapy twice a week." He stopped, swallowed. "They say, I have a lot of work to do. On myself. On understanding why I made the choices I made." "That's good. I'm also doing a victim impact program, where you sit with people who've been who've been hurt by people like me. And you listen. You listen to what it did to them. His eyes were wet, but he held it together. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. I nodded. I didn't offer praise. I didn't say I'm proud of you. Those words belonged to a different relationship. One that existed before forged signatures and cliffside contracts. Dad, I need to tell you something. Tell me. I think about Mom. Every day. About what she'd say. About what she'd think of me. His voice cracked, but he pushed through. And I know she'd be destroyed. I know I destroyed everything she believed about me, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life. Not just the 12 years. The rest of it. There it was. The thing I'd needed to hear, not an apology, not a plea for forgiveness, but an acknowledgement, a reckoning, the understanding that what he'd done didn't just betray me, it betrayed Linda. It betrayed the family she'd spent 40 years building. It took her legacy and burned it. Your mother, I said slowly, would be destroyed. You're right about that. But she'd also want you to become something better than this. She believed in redemption. She was a teacher. She spent her whole life believing people could learn and grow. I paused. I don't know if I believe that yet. Not for you. Not right now. But I'm willing to wait and see. Ethan nodded. Tears fell 2, 3, rolling down his cheeks unchecked. He didn't wipe them. He let them be. I'm selling the house, I said. The Scottsdale house. I'm leaving Arizona. Where will you go? Hawaii. Kailua, on the windward side of Oahu. I found a small place near the beach. I didn't say the rest, that I'd chosen Hawaii deliberately, that the island where they'd planned my death had also shown me something. Ocean light, warm air, a different pace of living. I was reclaiming it, taking back what they'd tried to turn into a grave and making it into a home. That sounds nice, Dad, Ethan said. And he meant it, I could tell. No angle, no calculation. Just a son being glad his father found something worth living for. We talked for another 30 minutes. Small things. The food in the facility. A book he was reading. A counselor he trusted. I told him about Marcus. About the support group I'd joined. About the therapist who was helping me rebuild. We talked like two people learning a new language together, careful, tentative, prone to long pauses. When the guard announced visiting time was ending, we both stood. Ethan looked at me with something raw and open in his face. Not expectation. Not hope. Just presence. He was here. I was here. That was all either of us could offer. Can I write to you? He asked. I thought about it. Really thought. Then, yes. You can write. Okay. He pressed his lips together. Fighting something. Dad? Yeah, thank you for coming. You didn't have to. And it means he couldn't finish. He just nodded a jerky, broken nod and turned toward the guard waiting by the side door. I watched him walk away. Khaki uniform, white sneakers, shoulders that used to stand straight and now curved inward like they were protecting something fragile. He didn't look back. The door closed behind him with a metallic click that echoed through the visiting room. I drove home through the Colorado mountains. Snow on the peaks, sun in the valleys. Somewhere near Glenwood Springs, I pulled over at a rest stop and called Marcus. How'd it go? He asked. I don't know, I said. I think it went like a beginning. 3 weeks later, I sold the Scottsdale house. $750,000 over asking. I signed the papers at the title company and felt nothing. No grief, no nostalgia, just release, like dropping ballast from an aircraft that's been flying too heavy for too long. I packed what mattered: Linda's photographs, her jewelry box, my flight logs, the model 777 Ethan had given me for Father's Day 15 years ago. Everything else I donated or left behind. On the 1st of March 2026, I boarded a flight to Honolulu. One way. Seat 2A. When the wheels left the ground, I closed my eyes and felt the familiar lift, that moment of separation. When earth falls away and sky takes over. For the first time in 2 years, I was flying towards something instead of away. It's April 2026. I've been in Kailua for 13 months now. The cottage is small, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that smells like plumeria from the tree outside the window. A lanai where I drink my coffee every morning and watch the Mokulua Islands turn gold in the first light. It's not the house on Camelback Road. It's not the life Linda and I built over 40 years. But it's mine. And it's enough. I wake early. Always have 31 years of pre-dawn flight calls hardwired my body clock permanently. But now the early hours aren't for checklists and weather briefings. They're for stillness. For the sound of waves reaching the shore 2 blocks away. For the feeling of being alive in a world that almost lost me. My therapist, a woman named Dr. Keiko Tanaka, Japanese-Hawaiian, 60s. Wise in the way that only people who've weathered their own storms can be, told me once that healing isn't a destination, it's a practice. Like flying, I said. You don't land once and call it mastery. You land 1,000 times, in 1,000 conditions. And each one teaches you something new. She smiled at that, said I was the first patient who'd ever compared trauma recovery to aviation. I told her she needed more pilots in her practice. I see her every Thursday. I sit in her office overlooking Kailua Beach, and I talk about things I never thought I'd say out loud. The rage, the grief, the guilt. Because there is guilt. Irrational, persistent, unearned guilt. The voice that says, "What did you miss? What did you do wrong? How did you raise a son who could put a price on your life?" Dr. Tanaka says that voice isn't truth. It's trauma, searching for a pattern it can control. I'm learning to hear it without obeying it. On Tuesdays, I go to my support group. 8 of us, men and women, ages 50 to 78, all betrayed by family, financial fraud, elder abuse, stolen inheritances. One woman's daughter forged her will while she was in the hospital. One man's brother sold his property while he was traveling overseas. We sit in a circle in a church basement in Kaneohe, and we tell our stories. Not for pity, for witness. For the simple power of saying this happened to me and having someone nod and say, "I believe you." I volunteer 3 days a week at the Kaneohe Marine Corps Base, reading to veterans in the rehabilitation ward. Some of them are young, 25, 30, with injuries that make my problems feel small. Some are old. Korean War and Vietnam. Their bodies failing but their minds sharp as glass. I read them whatever they want. Hemingway, Clancy. Sometimes, just the newspaper. One man, a retired sergeant named Hideo, 91 years old and blind in one eye, told me, "You got a good voice, pilot. Steady." The kind of voice that tells a man everything's gonna be okay, even when it isn't. I've thought about that compliment more than any I've ever received. Marcus visits every 2 months. Flies in from Phoenix, stays for a week. And we do what we've always done. Play cards, drink whiskey, talk about the old days. He doesn't ask about Ethan unless I bring it up. He doesn't push. He just shows up the same way he showed up at my kitchen table the night I called him with that insurance document in my hands. That's what real friendship is, I've learned. Not grand gestures, just presence. Consistent, reliable presence, Ethan writes. Once a month, a letter arrives handwritten, 2 or 3 pages. He talks about his program, his counselor, the books he's reading. He doesn't ask for forgiveness. He doesn't make excuses. He just tells me what he's doing and who he's trying to become. I read every letter. I don't always respond. But when I do, I keep it simple. I hear you. Keep going. That's all I have right now. Maybe someday I'll have more. Maybe I won't. God knows the answer to that question, and I've made my peace with not knowing God. I should say something about God because people always ask. They ask how I kept going, what sustained me, where I found the strength, And the honest answer is, I don't know. Some days I believe in a God who put Raymond Marcus in my path. Who sent that instinct, that pilot sense, that screaming instrument panel that told me something was wrong. Other days I think it was just luck. Wiring. Training. The accumulated wisdom of a man who'd spent decades trusting evidence over hope. But I pray anyway. Every morning on the lanai, coffee in hand, ocean in front of me. I pray because it's the one act that acknowledges something larger than my grief. And that's enough. Last month I flew again for the first time since Linda died. A local flight school in Kailua has a Cessna 172 old but well-maintained, the same model I trained on in 1983. I rented it for an hour, took off from Kaneohe Bay, and flew along the windward coast with the mountains on my left and the ocean on my right. The island spread below me green ridges, white beaches, a world going about its business, unaware that a 67-year-old man was up there remembering who he was before everything broke. I cried at 3,000 feet. Nobody saw, nobody heard. Just me and the engine and the sky and the salt wind coming through the vent. I cried for Linda, for the son I lost, for the father I used to be. And then I leveled the wings, wiped my face, and flew home. That's what you do. You level the wings. Every time turbulence hits, and it will hit, over and over. For the rest of your life, you level the wings, and you keep flying. You don't pretend the storm isn't real. You don't pretend it didn't damage you, but you don't let it take you down. You land. You inspect. You repair. And you take off again. If you're watching this and you've been betrayed by someone you love, your child, your spouse, your sibling, I want you to know something. You are not stupid for trusting them. You are not weak for loving them. Trust and love are not flaws. They are the things that make life worth living. The person who exploited them is the one who failed. Not you. Never you. And if you're out there alone right now, sitting in a quiet house, drinking coffee for one, wondering if it gets better, I'm telling you from the other side, it does. Not quickly, not easily, not without scars. But it does. Find your Marcus. Find your Dr. Tanaka. Find your Tuesday circle. Find the thing that reminds you that you are more than the worst thing that was done to you. And if you can't find it today, try again tomorrow. God puts people in our path when we need them most. I believe that. I have to believe that. Because a stranger at an airport, no, a friend in a diner saved my life. And I refuse to call that random. The morning light is changing now. The gold is shifting to white, the ocean flattening under the rising sun. Another day in Kailua. Another morning of being alive. I finish my coffee. I rinse the mug. I step off the lanai and into the world. Still flying. Still here. If this story meant something to you, if it made you think about someone you trust, or someone you've lost, or someone you need to call, I hope you'll share it. Not for me. For the next person sitting alone in a quiet house who needs to know they're not the only one. Subscribe if you want to hear more. Leave a comment if you've been through something similar. And if you haven't talked to someone you love in a while, call them today. Right now. Before the light changes. Because you never know how much time you have. And you never know who's counting on it ending.